Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 13, Week 2 Power Rankings. 1/4 of the way through the season. Is that enough to tell anything? Not sure, but we're going to tell you our thoughts anyways. I'm your host, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. As always, I'm joined by Steve, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
Let's get into some of the auction results here from Week 2. No trades this time, although watch out, there may be some coming up. Let's take a look at what happened in the auction this week. Route 1 Burbs, notorious for talking smack about everyone bids on their stuff. They won 4 Mons, the Tier 2 Low Kicks, the Tier 3 to Dunsparce, the Tier 4 Abomasnow, and the hotly contested Tier 5 Cricketoon for 3 points, with which they also dropped their Dedenne to make room on their team. We already got someone picking up a 12th Mon. Remember, only 11 Mons per team. Music City Mudkips on the board with Durgalch and the Landorus Eye Sandforest that was missed last time, Tier 3 and Tier 1 respectively. Wooper Troopers on the board with a Hatterini for Tier 2 and the Whiscash, basically free 1 point Whiscash from the Tier 5. CL Steamroll is getting in on the action again here too with some high early bids. Volcanion the Tier 1 and Clodsire Tier 2 rounding out the top of their team pretty nicely here. Boulders, Clobberers, Electabuzz missing the party here. Electabuzz for the second week in a row. Kanto Kingler after the big spending spree, and Zapdos picking up the Tier 3 Barraskewda, getting some speed on there. Cincinnati Incineroar coming in big with the 22 dropped on the Tier 1 Gengar, and supplementing that with the Tier 4 Doxbun and Primeape for cheap as well. Newport Noctile's not grabbing anything this time. Akron Agron's taking that Pincurchin to at least stem a little bit of what the Cincinnati Incineroar were up to. Calgary Corviknights without anything. Bouffalant with a couple of cheap pickups here. The Tier 4 Honchkrow and the Tier 5 Dragonair. And the Wobbuffets not wanting to be left behind for a second week in a row, opting to grab a bunch of stuff this week. The Tier 1 Zapdos, Galar, Tier 3 Donphan and Magzone, and the Tier 4 Bramblegast. A lot of movement here, but still had a few months that weren't picked up. Steve, take us through what happened in the auction. What is the story of the Week 2 auction?
Yeah, there are a lot of spending here. Some teams picking up things that previously didn't. A lot of teams taking their first week off, or at least not off, but especially at the end, not picking anything up. Starting with the bonds that weren't picked up, the most notable here was the Tier 2 Gothitelle not being picked up. Now, I kind of understand the Gothitelle not being picked up. It does kind of lean itself into a different type of gameplay that no one in our league has historically valued, the trapping. We've had Dugtrio available in the past, and no one's really gone for it. Gothitelle here giving a lot more universal of trapping, but is, a little hard to use, at least to my understanding. I haven't thought about it too much. But no one ended up going for it, even though someone could have got it for a single point bid. So a little disappointing to see. In addition to Gothitelle Tier 2, there were a couple of Tier 5s that were not picked up. Pikachu, Cacturn, Camerupt, and Carbink. Looking at the auction as a whole, things were in general toned down a little bit from Week 1. The averages across the board significantly dropping. Overall, in Week 1, the average was around 10 Woop bucks per Pokemon. A lot of people spending a lot of their starting 50. People a little more conservative this time, only spending around 6.8 on average for some of these mods, and that's carried by a lot of the big ones this week, especially that Gengar at 22. But this week also saw the start of some cheap mons at those higher tiers, which may be a trend we continue to see in future weeks. For example, these Tier 1 Volcanion and Zapdos Galar going for 8 and 6. Really cheap currently, especially when you think about Week 1 when the mons went for 25 and 15. And that also goes down to Tier 2 as well with the low kicks for 4. Things really getting a little bit cheaper and kind of surprising because there are some of those lower tier mons like the Tier 3 and Tier 4s that are still going for double digits. Dragalge going for 11, Donphan going for 12, Bramblegast in Tier 4 going for 12. So there are certainly some things that are desired. Of course, like Donphan and Bramblegast both have removal, Dragalge having toxic spikes as well as the adaptability boosted Poison and Dragon. So there are certainly reasons the mons that are getting picked are, but something like Zapdos, Galar, and Volcanion going for so cheap, probably some coaches missing out on some key members here. We'll see if these trends continue. If they do, I would expect by Week 4 or 5, things are going to be going for 1 point each. And then come Week 7 and 8, when everyone has a bunch of extra money and no reason to save it, we'll see auctions get crazy with mons going for 20 or 30 points consistently just because there's nothing else to spend your money on. But we'll certainly see as these next couple auctions if they continue to keep reducing the cost of mons.
Yeah, this feels like maybe a bit sudden course correction. I think we definitely all felt that week 1 is a little insane with how much stuff went for, but I didn't expect things to turn around this much this quickly. Thought maybe there'd still be a little bit more. So much so that, as you said, Gothitelle going by without anyone picking it up just seems crazy to me. Not that many opportunities so far to get your second tier 2 so far. Thought maybe at least just for one Woobuck somebody would be willing to go grab that, but not yet. That seems kind of crazy. Definitely interested to see if this continues. Maybe people have just had a bit more shot to say this is what I want long term, and we'll end up going for that and saving up our money for that. If a couple people have the same thought, yeah, I think we could see a couple spots here and there with some insane numbers going forward. That's going to conclude our overview of the auction from week 2. Let's take a look at what those resulted in the week 2 matches. Clobber starting us off again, eager to stay on the roll. They continued from the Beginners League again in week 1, but now the turns table as the Corviknight Clobberers are clobbered by the Calgary Corviknight, a convincing 4-0. Dancy setting up Iron Defense on Spidops, who sets up the web, and Circle throws it out into Reggie Drake, who will also starts setting up. Memento is a pretty good answer to that at the cost of the goat itself, Spidops. Palafin swap to transform as Eel forces out the Drago. Scissor pivots in, then back out to Reggie Drago, who can D-dance without the Memento on it. 2 D-dances up after 2 flash cannons, and Outrage Oko's Eel. U-turn out from the Scarf Cleavor, but that leaves Reggie Drago at 1, and Outrage KOs the incoming Brute Bonnet before Cleavor finally finishes that off. Scissor into Defog on Glowbro. Nasty Blot. Oh no, U-turn out a second Nasty Blot. Crunch from Dreadnought brings it low. Grassknot finishes it off. DNC comes in to finish that. No quick draw, never lucky. Setup War, Iron Defense, DNC, Terra's Steel to set up against Bulk Up Palafin with Wave Crash, Recoil, racking up, and Draining Kiss, recovering health for DNC. DNC gets down to 4%, but wins the war, and Cleavor forced to lock into a suboptimal move to try and compete, but no crits from Night Slash means DNC slowly sucks the life force from it. I guess Setup really is the name of the game for the Corviknight. Another impressive W from them. Next up, as we all expected, Noctowls are taking on the 1-0 Kanto Kinglers. The outcome, though, never really in question. It's the Noctowls taking yet another dub. Tauros chipped a bit early from red card Horse, then a cute interaction where Cresselia tricks its specs onto Mesprit in exchange for a Scarf. Well, give me those back, says Cresselia, and Grassknot does 81% to Ursaluna. Wow, but Ursaluna, of course, does take out Cresselia in return. Lando in and out, Zapdos in and out. The pivoting ends with Mabosstiff, whose Jaw Lock destroys Mesprit with the Terra Dark to back it up. Adrenaline Orb Tauros with Bulk Up. Terra Water, which Tauros are we talking about? Matched by Swords Dance Landorus? But it's not enough. At +2, +3, +1, Tauros hits Terra Blast on Lando and Salazzle. Stone Edge crits Zapdos in close combat, rips apart Mabosstiff and Horse. The surprising KO leader through 2 weeks is Tauros Combat from the Noctowls after his 5-0 win. Next match, 2 teams looking for comebacks after blowing early leads in their games week 1. The Boulder Boulders and the Wooper Troopers facing off, and boy did this end up being a one-sided affair for the Boulders. This will be quick. Rain Dance, Azelf, Explosion on Hatterene brings it low and out into Articuno. Freeze Try with Life Orb does a bit, but now we Terra Water and click Agility. Terra Blast does 60% to Corviknight with the Damp Rock on Azelf. The rain keeps falling. So Corviknight is sacked. Hatterene sacked. Roost on the Whiscash, who goes down to Freeze Dry. Roost on the Dullfox, who Terra's Water and survives the Freeze Dry, but it won't survive a second. Tauros down, and of course Noivern down. That's 6 KOs from Articuno. Unexpected for sure, but definitely the most impressive single mon performance thus far. Very nice. Halfway match, certified banger, the Route 1 Burbs and their Sun team taking on the newly upgraded Wobbuffets, 2 top 3 teams from our power rankings, but it's a big win for the Wobbuffets. 5-0. Our Balva tanking early with Light Screen and Reflect. Donphan and Alolan Muck trading knockoffs. Donphan gets a Brox. It's a slow positioning game to start for sure, but then Sludge Bomb from Glow King will get the poison on our Balva, setting up screens again, and then gets up the Toxic Spikes too, getting Muck back in to absorb them. Poison Touch gets Donphan on a clock, but it gets Light Clay off our Balva. Torkoal finally in on another T-Spike, taking Rock Chip and getting up its own rock, but Enamorous in to Calm Mind, taking a Lava Plume, and then Disaster. Earth Power actually KOs Torkoal. That's enormous for Enamorous. Light Screen up again as our Balva, who doesn't care, and sets up a second Clam Mind and Iron Defense. Typhlosion does very little, goes down to Flamethrower. Gunk Shot from Muck does 32 and gets the poison though. Another hit brings it low. Earth Power finishing Muck as its 3-0. Boom Burst from Dunsparce finally grabs a KO and a special attack boost, but here's Zapdos Galar forcing in the poison to poison Herbalva. More T-Spikes. Muck isn't absorbing these, but Dunsparce goes for a Hail Mary with agility. Boom Burst, not doing much though. It goes down. Magnezone chunks Walking Wake after taking hit, and Zapdos finishes the game. The Torkoal going down early was big. Steve with the clean win here. Next match, the Bouffalant making their season debut with a 3-0 win over the hapless Music City Mudkips. Turn 1, Wo Chen is immune to Sacred Sword and turns out. Oh wait, that's Zoroark. Tricked. Sandy Shock's Power Gem does half to Landorus, then loses the speed tie, goes down to EQ, only for Zoroark to revenge that too. Orthworm in on the revenge from Samurott. He and Dragalge then exchange some pleasantries and hazards, but then a crit from Dragalge will finish off Orthworm. Some bad luck so far, but never fear, Crabominable is here. EQ to KO that. Heatran in, and that's obvious, and with the Terra Water, Crabominable is the Heatran check, and that's obvious. Oko the Heatran next. Raichu into Forced Out, some switching gets Crab in against Leafeon, who does not take the KO and gets two-shot by Ice Hammer. You thought I was kidding about the Crab? It just does go down, but Arcanine is able to KO the Samurott with extreme speed, and the Raichu with Flare Blitz. Quick, easy game for the 3-0. Game 6 between the Steamrollers and the new look Illyria Electabuzz. Both teams looking to forget about week 1 and move forward, and this was a good one. With that said, looks like it'll be up to Michael, the Route 1 Burbs, to tell us about it in the match of the week. Go check that out and see if a plucky group of Tier 5 can be the hero of this match. Well, it didn't. The Steamrollers grabbed the 3-0 W, but how close could it have been? Actually, well, go check it out. Close to a repeat of last season's week 1 for the Bouffalant. Sheesh, go check that out and find out what we're talking about here on this very channel. Finally, at the time of recording, we are still waiting on the Agrons and Incineroar match. We will take a look at that one next time if they can get it to happen in a timely manner. And that's what happened in Week 2. With that rundown, we are ready to take a look at the power rankings. We saw a little bit of a shake-up here with a couple of those top teams facing off. Obviously, no shake-up at the top. The Newport Noctows, until proven otherwise, will remain number 1 here. But the Wobbuffets leapfrogging up to number 2. Bouffalant and Calgary Corviknight rounding out our top 4 of undefeated teams. Route 1 Burbs at number 5 as their top 1-1 team, followed by the Boulder Boulders after their big win. Seattle Steamrollers at 7, and Corviknight Clobber is sliding down to number 8. So we only really have one change overall, but a lot of sliding up and down. It probably just has to begin, once again, Newport Noctows, who unfortunately will be sliding the Kanto Kinglers off of our list. Noctows, impressive as always. We get that Paldean Combat Tauros is the KO leader. What are we doing? Is this mon? What's up with this? What's Jimmy doing?
Yeah, fantastic use of it. A little bit of an unoriginal typing for it. Might as well just use Raging Bull, although that wouldn't quite work as he would want, but still worked out very well. It was a great use of the Mon. Water's such a good defensive Terra type, be able to give Mons that longevity, especially if your opponent is not prepared for it. Gave it the chance to set up and pull through. Showing what Jimmy's capable of doing here, and taking a big win with the horse adjacent.
And with them obviously remaining at number 1, Wobbuffets moving up to number 2, because wow, was this a big one against the Burbs. I mentioned it before, but that Torkoal going down early, I don't know if you know this, Steve, but that is a Sun team that the Burbs have, and without the ability to set up Sun manually, the whole rest of the match seemed like it was an uphill battle. What say you?
I definitely agree. I was quite surprised to see the Torkoal stay in that turn. I know during the battle, Michael was calking something and adjusted, and then kind of just clicked the move, he said. He kind of forgot, didn't realize what was going on, and by the time he realized, Earth Power lands, and Torkoal's out of there. Really, really changed the dynamic of the battle. With Torkoal still there, have to worry about, especially the Walking Wake getting a +1 to speed with the Photosynthesis. Could have been a very different game. But as it was, with that going down, the rest of the team quickly followed and was able to pull out. Big win here against another one of the top 5 teams. Really thrusting myself forward there into that number 2 spot.
And then rounding out our top 4, the Bouffalant finally getting on the board with a win here. Didn't get to play week 1, but week 2, pretty nice their win there. Got a couple of hacks moments against me, but still came through there. Corviknight, really impressive win there too against the Clobberers. Maybe their new look helping them out a little bit there too, with a couple of setup mons really putting in a lot of work. What stands out to you about those 2 matches?
Both of these coaches doing well. I mean, the Bouffalant, this is certainly what we expect of them. They came out here, they had a little bit of, as you mentioned, bad luck, but were able to pull through, still get a solid win even with that. with the luck going a slightly different way, they would have had probably a little bit better differential, and that makes sense to keep them here due to their historical prestige, and we'll see how well that holds up. The Calgary Corviknight, though, they have been looking quite solid between their first two matches. I know I especially noticed them week one, and I don't think I've watched their second week match in its entirety, but I did see parts and pieces of it with all the different setup threats doing well. I know that's certainly how I like to look at my team building is, hey, if this Pokemon had +3 special attack, it sweeps. And if this Pokemon had +2, it sweeps. And he was able to do it. Was able to get the chance to set everything up and, go to town, had enough bulk to get the Mons to survive enough to set up and make these big attacks. Very solid performance. Excited to see what the Calgary Corviknight are get up to as they face some more of especially the top 5 teams and see if they're able to hold on to this winning streak they have going currently.
I think that 3 and 4, maybe even 2, 3 and 4 are a little closer than we might think. The Corviknight, if they keep up those performances, watch out. Verbs we already chatted about a little bit. Bouldors. Oh my goodness, that Articuno set, inside intel here that Rain Dance set and the Terra Water set from Articuno concocted pretty much right before their match. But boy, did that end up working. You talked about sweeping. Well, here you go, just one Mon.
That's what it is, and I'm disappointed in myself in the week 1 auction for letting Articuno go where it did. I had recognized that as a bulky Mon with the ability to Terra, it certainly could have some abilities to do well, and Sazbo showed it here. A fantastic matchup, identified against his opponent's team that it would do well. Funnily enough, going with the Terra Water against the team who had the 2 low-tier electric types. However, neither of them came, so the bulky water type really did work. And that is certainly something you can look at in team building in general, is if you're matching up against the Bouldors and you see, hey, they don't really have an electric weakness. They got Kilowattrel immunity, they got Great Tuscan immunity. Why am I bringing that? And then, taking a low-tier bulky Mon, Terra Water, all of a sudden you're trying to figure out how you're actually going to break through it, and really emphasizes how much some versatile moves are needed in really every team, so you're ready for anything.
Terra Water taking a front seat this week for sure. Articuno plus the Tauros plus the Crabominable. Terra Water, shout out to you. Steamrollers didn't really chat about because it's the match of the week. Relatively close match here, actually, but Steamrollers obviously we have enough respect for them to be able to do turn around after a week 1 L there. And Clubbers are hanging on here too. We want to talk a little bit about the 5 through 8. These are a bunch of 1-1 teams here. A little tough to parse things out. Obviously, a little tough too, as you'll mention, with one match yet to be completed. But how do we come to this conclusion of this 5 through 8?
Well, the Burbs, we kind of set ahead as they had a win against a 1-1 team. All the other 1-1 teams had just wins against 0-2 teams. So it kind of made sense to give the Burbs that little bit of an edge there. And then as for the rest of the teams, it came down a little bit to their just the schedules and how we feel about them. The Bouldors, having played the Noctowls and had a very good game with the Noctowls, followed by a big win, that seemed to be a sign that they are on the right course and gave them that next spot. The Steamrollers with their historic prestige, and then a close win here against the Illyria Electabuzz, and then as well as previously a loss to a historically good Burbs team. That's certainly enough to keep them up here towards the top. We did give the slight edge to the Bouldors based on what we've seen this season, but I would not be surprised if they switched places in future weeks. And then the Clobbers kind of just slid down from there. There were talks about other teams. There's the 0-1 teams that, if one of them wins, they could potentially slide into the spot, depending on how that goes. We talked about the Kanto Kinglers, but we really didn't see anything from any of the teams that really warranted reorganizing them within the 1-1s. So kind of slid everything down, and the Corviknight Clobbers held on to that position above, which is currently that number 8 spot.
Yes, it looks like the big winners this week, and especially moving forward, the Calgary Corviknight Boulder starting to claim some names here and potentially moving up a little bit more in the rankings moving forward. That said, we're done with Week 2 wrap-up here for Power Rankings. Let's see what they have to do in Week 3 in order to get ahead. And, Steve, a couple of really nice standout matches here. What are you seeing?
Yes, a key one here is a couple of these teams we were talking about towards the bottom of the power rankings, the Seattle Steamrollers and the Calgary Corviknights. Knights. Both teams currently 1-1. No, Calgary Corviknights Knights 2-0. I'm just wrong there. But the old guard Seattle Steamrollers been in the most finals out of anyone, going up against the Calgary Corviknights. The new upstart team who has a really strong start. Very excited to see this match and see which team will come out on top. But also, your match seems like it's looking pretty solid there as well.
Yeah, it's an old grudge match here. Bouffalant and Noctowls there up at the top. The preseason 1 and 2 Noctowls really coming very close to the Bouffalant and overtaking the overall number 1 seed, which we've had since season 4, I believe, at least. It's been a little bit since it's been in this much jeopardy. And the Noctowls haven't lost in a hot minute either, so maybe this is the time for the Noctowls to really take over and assert themselves as the team to beat. But of course, I would be remiss too if we didn't bring up your game as well, Steve. The Wobbuffets and the Boulders. We just talked about the Boulders coming off their big win. Wobbuffets also a big win. These are two hot teams right now, and the winner of this could catapult them up a little bit. Imagine if the Bouffalant Noctowls look a little subpar. Wobbuffets could very much, with a nice win here, move above them into 1, potentially. Boulders get a win. Maybe they start breaking into the top 4. This has some nice implications for the future power rankings for sure. So some really nice matches coming up. Maybe some others at the bottom that'll shake things up a little bit. That will do it from us here. Thank you again to Steve for joining me for the power rankings this week. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again here for week 3, where we may have an extra match to cover as well. We'll see you then.